And so yet another entry into the hidden history of the African American warrior. Now, several African Americans were honored with the U.S. Medal of Honor for their action and bravery, and it was now known that by this point that African Americans could stand up and deliver when it came to war, when it came to battles, when it came to victories in those battles. The first African American honored with the Medal of Honor for his efforts in the Civil War was a man named Robert Blake. Robert Blake was a Navy sailor during the Civil War and a recipient of America's highest decoration, the Medal of Honor. Blake was only the second African American to perform a Medal of Honor action, with William Harvey Carney, as you've heard on this show, being the first to get that honor. Blake was the first, however, to receive his Medal of Honor, presented with it in 1864, while Carney did not receive his until 1900. Robert Blake was born into slavery in Virginia in June of 1862. His plantation was burned during the Union naval expedition up the Santee River. About 400 slaves from that plantation, including Blake, were taken as contraband onto Union ships and sent to North Island in Winyah Bay. While on North Island, Blake answered the call for 20 single men to serve on the USS Vermont, knowing full well that he would be relegated to the rank of boy. On Christmas in 1863, Blake was transferred to the gunship USS Marblehead and was serving as a steward to Lieutenant Commander Richard Warsom Meade. Early Christmas morning on the Stano River, the Marblehead came under fire from a Confederate howitzer at Legarville on Johns Island, and at this point Blake went to the gun deck and was immediately knocked down by an exploding shell that exploded near him. That explosion killed a powder boy who was manning one of those guns. Blake had no assigned combat role, being the lieutenant commander's steward, so he could have retreated to safety below decks, but instead he showed his mettle and took over the powder boy's duties in loading the guns. Blake was then later promoted to seaman and then re-enlisted for another term in the Navy. During his second enlistment, Blake served on the USS Vermont. Nothing is known about his later life, besides the fact that he was honored with the Medal of Honor for his bravery and actions on the Marblehead in 1864. Robert Blake there, folks. So the drama continues on the White House show. So I'm calling it now Whitlock, because it's so dramatic. And the president is obviously a television star that he wanted to be, instead of being president. He's treating this whole thing like a TV show, so I think we should call it what it is until it looks like a presidency. Now, there's several talks about interviews. Robert Mueller's team is closing in on the president himself for an interview about the firings of James Comey, as well as Michael Flynn. And a possible obstruction of justice case is coalescing around all these interviews. Of course, the president yesterday said he was not concerned about the interview that Jeffrey Sessions gave to Robert Mueller. He absolutely should be. This, of course, the same Sessions who tendered his resignation to the president refused to accept after recusing himself from the Russia investigation. But now, in an effort to shift attention, as always, common trait with this administration, there's talk of a memo coming out. DuBois Devin Nunes apparently has a memo to show how unfair the FBI was in investigating the Trump campaign. The memo is not out yet. No word on when the memo will be out. But all this memo is is a misdirection tactic, folks. Do not be fooled. This memo is put out, it's basically just a list of talking points, right? Republican talking points that they put forward to try to discredit the FBI.
Just to take up for Trump?
Exactly. Just to discredit the investigation into Trump and his campaign about possible collusion between Trump and Russia, and also obstruction of justice by Trump in firing James Comey, specifically because he was investigating the relationships here. And that's what it's all about, is relationships. Folks don't really understand the power of relationships when it comes to this level of play. But that's what it's all about. Who do you know? Who would you like to know? What are you willing to do to meet that person, to get in that person's ear? Yesterday saw several, what some are calling bombshells, not the least of which, of course, Sessions' testimony, but also the fact that FBI Director Christopher Wray threatened to quit. Yet another FBI director could have been gone. He came under pressure from Sessions when Sessions was asking him to clean out leadership figures dating from the Comey era of the FBI. Wray didn't feel comfortable about that, obviously, because he saw what was happening in front of him. You also saw the report that the then acting FBI director, Andrew McCabe, was asked by the president in a meeting between the two in the Oval Office, in the first meeting, in the introductory get-to-know-you meeting. McCabe is asked by the president, so who did you vote for? Now, why in the world would the President of the United States ask the acting FBI director, after he just fired the previous FBI director, who he voted for?
I guess he wanted to know who's on his side. Whose side are you on?
Exactly. No, you said it right the first time. He wants to know who's on his side. But to ask an FBI director who you voted for, obviously, is to get some understanding about where his loyalties lie. His wife, McCabe's wife, had Democratic affiliations. So the president was concerned that this guy would not see him too favorably based on who he possibly could have voted for. Now, I know some of his staunch supporters will not, some of the trumpets will now say, oh, well, I'm sure if Hillary had won, then, or I'm sure President Barack Obama didn't take too kindly to, and that is their downfall, trying to go back to the past to justify current actions of the sitting president, and then making up hypotheticals. Hillary Clinton was never president, will probably never be president of the United States. Her name being brought up automatically is, well, not only a deflection, but it does Trump supporters a disservice because it actually shows that they're trying to deflect rather than actually look at the issues. There's been no word, absolutely no word, about Hillary Clinton or the Obama administration and any kind of ties between any foreign body entity. Nothing comes close to a comparison here. And seriously, the whole idea that the Clinton campaign set up this whole investigation for a dossier is grasping at straws at best. This thing was in motion already by members of the president's party. But to bring all this up now, after all this other information is out, it's just kind of pathetic. You know, it's really just obviously folks attempting to show you something shiny to draw your attention away because they know that works on the president. So it should work on you, right?
I guess.
So now, after all of this drama, attempting to discredit this Russia probe here, the White House said that the president's ready to get this memo out. 4 associates so far have been charged in the Mueller investigation. 4 Trump associates have been charged. But what the president is more concerned with, not Jeff Sessions' testimony, he could have a clue, he's actually done everything he could to still discredit this whole investigation. He's still taking to Twitter to call it a witch hunt and a hoax and all of that. Yet, 4 people have been charged. He absolutely did fire James Comey. He did fire James Comey because of the Russia investigation. He admitted as much. But this is a hoax. This is a witch hunt. Witch hunt. So now, DuBois Devin Nunes is going to don't look at me like that. Don't look at me. She's looking at me sideways because I keep calling him that. She doesn't like that. Well, I didn't like it when the president called Chuck Schumer crying Chuck Schumer on Twitter. But with a little bit. I didn't see Chuck Schumer cry. He may have waffled a bit, but he didn't cry. We'll get to him and his taking the wall off the table here in a second. But Devin Nunes is now proposing to release this memo alleging unfair treatment of the Trump administration during the campaign, or the Trump campaign, before the administration, the lead up to the White House. The previous administration has said, based on the information that they received about the possible collusion, the friendly relations, can we at least admit that, folks, that there were friendly relations? I mean, these guys had a meeting in Trump Tower, for God's sake. His son was there. His son-in-law was there. I mean, are we not? So, at this point now, after all the hoax and witch hunt talk, branding this episode of the White House show, we see that Mueller's doing his job. He's actually getting the ducks in a row. Mueller's interested in Trump's efforts to remove Sessions, to pressure him into quitting, even though Sessions, offered his resignation, and Trump didn't accept it. He wasn't allowed to quit. You can't go, Jeff. Where do you think you're going? Take your hand off the door. You're not going anywhere. That's creepy. That's scary. When you want to leave, you can't leave. So now Mueller is zeroing in here, and he is doing his best to do his due diligence, as he should. Because on its face, this stinks to high heaven, And if folks can't see that, it's only because they don't want to. It's only because their pride in their party, or the great hope that they had in the president, has now been shown to be, fruitless at most.
Right.
And now it's obvious. Some folks are having trouble to wrapping their head around this, and they really should.
I just think at this point they agree that he's not the right person for the president. Then it would be admitting that they've been wrong all along.
Yeah.
So
Well,
stick to the story.
And right. I get that point of view. I understand that, but
At one point they probably did believe Trump, so that makes
misguided, perhaps. I don't want to call them stupid, but I can't argue with their lack of judgment, obviously. But what's so amazing to me at this juncture here, right on the cusp of something, and then you can almost kind of see that something is about to break open here, one way or the other. Either Mueller's going to have to say, okay, President, we need to have a talk, and the president says no, and they're wrapped up in discussions or negotiations between the president's lawyers and Mueller and his team, or the president says okay, and there's a conversation, and in that conversation something is gleaned, either one way or the other way, but something has got to shake here. And the continuing misdirection with pointless memos and what about this and what about that is not going to change the fact that the president, by his own words, got this whole thing started. And you know what I'm talking about. Do I really need to play it for him? It's been a while. Let's go ahead and play it for you. Why this is all going on, it's the president's doing, folks.
There's any indication that Mueller is wrapping up?
With him, I have no relationship with him. He has said nice things about me over the years. I remember years ago, he said something, many years ago. He said very nice things about me, but I have no relationship with him.
When I went to Russia with the Miss Universe pageant, he contacted me and was so nice.
I have no relationship with Putin. I don't think I've ever met him. I never met him. I was in Russia. I was in Moscow recently, and I spoke indirectly and directly with President Putin.
I have been nicer, but I have never spoken to him on the phone, no.
So it's one thing or the other thing. According to the new book, Fire and Fury, President did not have this cozy relationship that he bragged about having with Putin, but he wanted it. So he's doing everything he could to try to maneuver to get it. Whether it is having some folks meet with some Russians, or possibly having a trip and having some talks in Russia. But none of this would be happening if that state or those series of statements had not been uttered by the president. If there had been an honest admission, one way or the other, yeah, I know Putin. No, I don't know Putin. Yeah, I mean, you know, we golf. He's great. We go horseback riding.
We spoke directly
And indirectly.
indirectly.
But, you know, if that wasn't the case, then he shouldn't have said it. But he said it. And if he hadn't said it initially and then backtracked and tried to deny it, none of this would be going on, folks. None of it. None of it. But the base remains strong somehow, and that baffles me. I mean, I just don't get it. I don't get it. Even the evangelicals are now just, oh well, he turned those hookers away in Russia. He didn't indulge with those hookers in Russia.
Fake news.
I guess. But what's not fake news? What's not fake news is Michael Cohen, Trump's lawyer, being identified by the Wall Street Journal as having arranged a payment for Stormy Daniels, the adult film actress who allegedly had the affair with the president. This was in 2016, right before the election ramps up. There are receipts for this, folks. With the evangelicals, give him a pass. It's all good. Never mind Melania was pregnant and at home whilst your president gallivanted with adult film star Stormy Daniels. That doesn't matter. This all puts not just the office of the presidency into great question, but also the status of the country. That much is seen as a fact in the actions now happening across the water. Actions in China, actions in Korea. China now says it'll back a peaceful, unified Korea. Of course, Kim Jong-un is going to attempt to solidify the peninsula under his rule, North and South Korea. That much has been well documented. That's what he wants. But the fact that China now says that it's up to Korea to adopt an independent foreign policy, to unify peacefully, and then if they do that, when they do that, we'll back them. That's serious. That's serious. China says now a unified Korean peninsula is that they're open to it, as long as it is peaceful, it doesn't threaten national security. But the maneuvering here is what's so important to me, Whitlock, is because all these people are, and all these nations are trying to push forward in spite of our leadership. The agreement that the U.S. pulled out of, the other nations are moving along with. Now, the president's going to be talking to his good friends, the oligarchs, coming up here to discuss, basically to tout the economy and take credit for all the things the previous administration, the ripple effects of the previous administration, which, hey, if you're the president, who's going to argue, right? Except people who actually know the facts. But we see now these foreign nations are positioning themselves, getting ready for whatever comes next, however it pans out. China wants a denuclearization of Korea, the entire peninsula, with no armed conflict or chaos on any of the borders. Now, of course, Kim might have an issue with that. I would imagine if the U.S. is asking him to denuclearize and he's bucking at that China's not going to have that much more luck. Unless China gives Kim something he wants. Unless China says, hey, look, okay, we know things are tense now between the North and the South. Kim, we'll instate you as leader of both. However, we need your nukes. But what we'll do is we'll supplement your army. We'll make sure that you, on the North and the South side, are cool. North Korean and South Korean forces will be supplemented now by Chinese forces. And this is just me thinking outside the box here, trying to get ready for whatever comes next here, folks. But if that were to happen, China and North Korea and South Korea, or just Korea at that point, become even bigger power players. And China right now is the biggest, but their power grows exponentially once they get the peninsula under their control. If they can back a peaceful Korean peninsula, then Asia changes. The face of Asia and the rest of the world is altered from that point on. And tariffs on refrigerators and solar panels are not going to do much to change that, Mr. President. So, we now see how it all pans out. Of course, the president now is still ducking and dodging. He'll have his lawyers talk to Mueller's folks before he actually agrees to a conversation, if he agrees to a conversation. But pay very close attention and don't take what he says on Twitter as fact, as law. Because he said before that he'd be willing to testify. He said he'd cooperate with the investigation however they wanted, as long as it got done, right? Just wants it over with. Well, he shouldn't open his mouth to get it started in the first place, but that's already happened. That's in the past. We can only focus on right now and the future. And right now, the heat is on. Right now, after the conversation with Jeffy, the request for the interview with the president could come at any moment. And when that happens, then look out, folks, because repercussions are coming. And that's not just, hopes and dreams here. One way or the other, something will shake out. Either Mueller gets fired, this whole thing gets quashed, and then we know for sure that the president is attempting to put the kibosh on this investigation, or the president is brought to the table to answer for obstruction of justice, at least.
And that's a criminal charge, right?
Right. Collusion with the Russian government at most. Either way. This is going on for something. It's not for nothing. It's not much to do about nothing. If it were, it'd be done now. Money is being spent on this. As I said before, the president also blasted Democratic leader Chuck Schumer over their border negotiations. Schumer now has taken the wall off the table. That will not be a part of the negotiation now, apparently. Congress forced the government shutdown over the weekend over policy disputes with immigration, including, however, funding of the wall and the future of the DACA recipients. After much mocking by the president and name-calling, calling Schumer crying Chuck, Schumer is now taking the wall off the table. No wall. So the president retorts, no wall, no deal. Folks should have seen this coming. But it was only a 4-month stopgap anyway, so it's not like that much was accomplished. The government got to trudge on a little bit longer, but come February 8th, we're faced with the same impasse here. Over the border wall. Over $40 million for a border wall. All of this now is being held up because of the president's key issue, which again, don't forget, Chuck Schumer gave him in the negotiations. Twice. The deal was struck. Republicans and Democrats had an accord. Everybody was getting a little bit of what they wanted. Not everything, but at least some. Schumer took the information or the deal to the president. The president says no deal. Wouldn't sign it. And that's why Schumer and others had labeled what just happened last week and into the weekend and the beginning of this week the Trump shutdown. Or the government shakedown, like Reverend Al called it. This again, another indication of a lack of leadership. And, folks trying to turn this into some sort of big victory for the president, I think, are kind of not looking far enough ahead here. Just like the folks who are taking these $1,000 bonus checks and thinking that the president's now solved the issue of economic strife in this country. A $1,000 bonus check is not a raise.
No, it's not. It's gone.
After you spend that grand, after that stack is gone, it's over. You get your regular pay, hopefully, but you won't get a raise. But now, folks are saying, the president will be touting that. The president will be touting that when he goes to speak. He will be saying that, oh, didn't you appreciate that $1,000? Didn't you like that check? Well, it's just a check. So no real accomplishment here as far as tax inequality. He and his friends just got way, way richer. Their tax cuts are permanent. Our tax cuts, folks in the middle class, lower middle class, and some upper middle class, temporary. Temporary. So, again, we will certainly keep you posted as this all unfolds. However, very interesting times across the whole world. The Pope now is condemning fake news. The Pope is talking about fake news, but not how you may think. He likened it to the serpent in Genesis, actually. He went biblical on it. Pope Francis said in a message that he condemns fake news and says that it's a sign of, quote, intolerant and hypersensitive attitudes and only leads to the spread of arrogance and hatred. The Vatican says that message was part of the Pope's World Communications Day. Pope probably, according to some, the Pope was probably sending a message to our president and other world leaders who've been using that phrase now. Coined that phrase. That phrase had already been there. Okay, don't give him credit for that. He didn't come up with that, but that's been a vital part of his misinformation campaign, is this whole notion of fake news. The Pope said that the first fake news dates back to the book of Genesis, coming from, quote, the crafty serpent, end quote, when he lied to the woman. According to the Pope's message, the fast digital world now in this day and age helps fuel the spread of fake news, which he defined as, quoting him, the spreading of disinformation online and in traditional media. Spreading fake news can serve to advance specific goals, influence political decisions, and serve economic interests, end quote. Disinformation thus thrives on the absence of healthy confrontation with other sources of information that could effectively challenge prejudices and generate constructive dialogue. Instead, it risks turning people into unwilling accomplices and spreading biases and baseless ideas. It kind of sounds like the memo coming out. Fake news, folks. Fake news. We've heard it constantly since this administration, since before this administration took office. Don't fall victim. The Pope himself is warning you to combat this proliferation of fake news, this phenomenon of fake news. Because believing something that simply is not true, like how some folks believe that, the president's an upstanding guy.
And anything on his Twitter page.
Any and everything on his Twitter page. Don't fall for it. Don't fall for it. It really, I want certain people to be more aware. I don't want to say smarter, but more aware of the information that's bombarding them, and they're not. They don't look a certain kind of way. They come from every age demographic, every socioeconomic demographic. There's at least a group of folks who just take whatever is given to them at face value. And in the information age, with the internet, social media, with everything moving so fast, it's that much, there's no excuse, and it's that much more dangerous, because when you're keyed into your timeline, you're getting stuff that you would get anyway. You're getting stuff that will foster whatever emotions you've already imparted to whatever social media source you use. If you like whoever, certain information based on whoever's views will be pushed to you. That's how this all works. That's how you're marketed to online. That's how these folks make money. Lots of money. So I think, as we get more and more tied to our phones, more and more tied to devices, we're becoming more and more short-sighted. This goes back to paying attention to the world around you. I mean, the Pope would not make this message unless he had a serious concern about this phenomenon, about folks being swayed by alternative facts or just outright false information. Folks, let's call it what it is, lies. Lies. The Pope sees that this is an issue that affects the entire world. You continue to let yourself be swayed, be run amok, you know, and you get what you got. Get what you got. So, certain folks, we talked yesterday about China banning hip-hop culture. And some folks here in America, some hip-hop artists, have now spoken out about hip-hop on culture and society. Black Eyed Peas in particular. will.i.am and Taboo and Apple D. App have made some very strong comments about how hip-hop affects society at large, but women in particular. And this whole activism movement now that we see growing, that we really haven't seen since when, like the 60s. So we're going to be talking about that a little bit, and then kind of going back to what we talked about yesterday with this whole ban of hip-hop culture and the root of that, the root of why the Chinese government is now taking this stance on this particular culture when it comes to what their people get to see and hear, but specifically what they get to see. And we're going to break that down a little bit further here. But so will.i.am is saying that hip hop is not good for women.
Yeah.
That it is putting them in a weaker societal position. How is he breaking this down here?
Well, basically, in hip hop and rock, he speaks about women being more of a resource versus an attribution.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'd rather let him say it.
I got you.
But just basically the perception of women in the musical form.
He doesn't see it as good for women.
No, non-empowering,
Okay.
diminished, degrading.
All right. We will get to the Black Eyed Peas comments here and see if you agree on them. And of course, as previously reported, China now has effectively banned hip hop culture from television at all, and including the government's own Twitter account and YouTube channel. So we'll keep you up to date on that, and also get the Black Eyed Peas comments, and get you caught up with whatever else is happening in the rest of the world. Here locally, very heroic action by an officer saved a couple lives here, so we will definitely comment on that when we come back.
It's about that time to get away
Make your reservations, pack your bag.
and head on down